Oh, darling, you're just too hot to handle. This is gold. Pure gold.
They thought I was just another poor woman who didn't belong in their luxury salon. They mocked me, burned my hair, and scarred my neck, while everyone watched in silence. But what they didn't know, my husband owns half the city, and he was on his way. If you've ever been insulted by people who think money makes them superior, watch till the end. This story will show you how silence becomes power, and kindness becomes the sharpest form of revenge. Hit subscribe and share this story with someone who needs to remember their worth. I still remember the sound of those marble heels clicking on the floor when I walked into La Belle Étoile that morning. The salon was breathtaking, walls of glass, chandeliers dripping like raindrops frozen in gold, and the faint scent of jasmine and hairspray blending together. It was the kind of place people came to be seen, not just to look beautiful, and that's exactly why everyone stared when I walked in. I wasn't dressed like them. I wore a soft cream blouse, simple pearl earrings, and a pastel skirt I'd bought on sale last spring. No designer logos, no glittering jewelry, just me. Simple, quiet, comfortable. But in that world, simplicity looked like poverty. The receptionist looked me up and down before forcing a smile. "Can I help you, ma'am?" she asked, her tone polite but her eyes uncertain, as if I'd entered by mistake. "I'd like a trim," I said softly. "Something elegant. Not too short." She hesitated, glancing toward 3 women sitting near the window, clearly regulars. They were everything the salon celebrated, rich, loud, and utterly sure of themselves. Their hair was styled to perfection, their nails gleamed like glass, and their laughter filled the room like perfume. I felt their gaze cut through me before they even spoke. "Oh dear," one of them whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Someone wandered in from the budget salon down the street." The others laughed. My stomach tightened, but I didn't say a word. I just smiled, trying to stay composed. The stylist approached me hesitantly, guiding me to a chair. "We'll take care of you," she said, though even she sounded unconvinced. As I sat down, the 3 women kept whispering, their reflections visible in the mirror beside mine. "Did you see her shoes?" one muttered. "Looks like she walked here." "Maybe she's lost," another giggled. "Or maybe she's trying to catch a rich husband," the third one smirked. I wanted to disappear. My cheeks burned hotter than the curling irons buzzing around us. I focused on my reflection, my calm expression, my neatly pinned hair, my trembling hands in my lap. I kept reminding myself to breathe. The stylist began snipping gently, but the women didn't stop. Their laughter grew sharper, meaner, like glass breaking in my ears. At one point, one of them stood up, pretending to admire my hair. "Oh, honey, let me help you." I used to do this all the time. Before I could answer, she grabbed a curling iron from the counter. I thought she was joking. I even smiled nervously. But then I felt it, the sudden burn, the smell of scorched hair. I gasped and flinched, the pain shooting up my scalp. The iron hissed as strands of my hair curled, smoked, and broke apart. "Oh no," she said mockingly. "Guess your cheap hair couldn't handle luxury heat." Her friends laughed. One reached forward, touching my neck with the still hot barrel. The searing pain made me cry out. It was like fire licking my skin. The entire salon went silent. I looked around, pleading for someone to stop them, to say something, but no one did. The staff froze. The clients averted their eyes. No one wanted to offend their rich customers. Tears blurred my vision. I could feel the burn pulsing on my neck, the smell of burned hair clinging to me like shame. I stood up, shaking. One of the women waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be so dramatic." "We were just playing." I stumbled toward the door, clutching my scarf to cover the mark. My reflection in the glass looked nothing like the woman who had walked in. Broken hair, red skin, eyes full of humiliation. I heard their laughter echoing behind me as the door closed. Out on the sidewalk, the cool air hit my face, but it didn't cool the burn inside me. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. My voice was barely a whisper when I said his name. And that's when everything changed. I stood outside the glass doors of that salon, trembling so hard I could barely breathe. My reflection stared back at me, hair uneven, eyes wet, neck red and blistered where the iron had touched. People passed by without even glancing at me. I wanted to scream, to tell someone what they'd done, but the words were trapped in my throat. I'd never felt smaller in my life. For a moment, I thought about walking away, just disappearing, but something inside me, a quiet, shaking kind of strength, told me not to. I wiped my tears, took a slow breath, and walked back in. My heart was pounding like thunder. The same 3 women were laughing near the counter, sipping champagne like nothing had happened. When they saw me return, one of them raised an eyebrow. "Oh, she's back," she sneered. "Did you forget your pride on the floor?" I didn't respond. I just walked up to the manager, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your customers burned me," I said softly. "They hurt me." The manager glanced nervously at the 3 women, then back at me. Her lips pressed into a thin, frightened line. "Ma'am, please, this is a luxury salon. We don't tolerate drama. That's what she called it. One of the women stood and came closer, circling me like a predator with perfume instead of claws. "You really don't belong here," she whispered. "Maybe if you were cleaner, richer, better." She grabbed a handful of my hair again, twirling it in her fingers. "Your hair's ruined anyway. Let me fix it properly." Before I could move, she switched the curling iron back on, that sharp electric hiss filling the air again. I froze. The other women laughed, pulling out their phones, pretending to film like it was entertainment. And then it happened again. The heat hit my skin before my mind even registered the pain. The smell of burning hair filled the room. I screamed this time, not from weakness, but from shock and rage. I pushed her hand away, but the iron had already caught a section of my hair. It sizzled as it fell to the floor, blackened and smoking. Gasps rippled across the salon. Still, no one came forward. Not the staff, not the clients, not even the manager. Everyone just watched. Tears streamed down my face. My voice shook. "Why? What did I ever do to you?" The woman smirked. "You walked into our world like you belonged here. You needed to be reminded where you stand." The other 2 burst out laughing. "Oh, come on, it's just hair," one said. "She should be grateful she got this much attention." That was the moment something broke inside me. The humiliation burned hotter than the iron. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, just stared at them through the mirror, their reflections warped and cruel. For the first time, I saw them for what they really were, not beautiful, not powerful, just empty. When I turned to leave, one of them shoved me lightly toward the exit. "Run along, sweetheart," she said, voice dripping with venom. "Next time, go where you belong." The salon door shut behind me with a heavy thud. I stumbled onto the pavement, clutching my scarf around my burned neck, my hair sticking to my tears. People walked by, busy, indifferent. I sank down onto a nearby bench, my body shaking uncontrollably. And then, for the first time, I let myself cry, really cry. The kind of crying that feels like it's ripping something out of your chest, not just from pain, but from disbelief. How could people be so cruel and still smile like nothing happened? I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling. There was only one person I wanted to call, the one person who always made me feel safe, my husband, the man the world called ruthless, the man they didn't know existed in my story. When I pressed his name, Nathaniel Cross, my voice barely came out. They burned me," I whispered. "They hurt me." For a moment, there was silence, and then his voice changed, low, dangerous, controlled. "Stay there," he said. "Don't move." The call ended, and I sat there under the soft hum of the city, my breath shallow. Somewhere deep inside, between the pain and the fear, a flicker of something else began to rise. Not revenge, not anger, something quieter, something powerful, because I knew the storm had already been unleashed. I sat there on the cold bench outside the salon, my hand still shaking as I held the phone against my chest. My breath came in shallow bursts, my neck burned with every heartbeat, and the smell of burnt hair still clung to me like shame. I remember staring at the reflection of La Belle Étoile in the glass across the street, the gold letters, the warm lights, the laughter still echoing inside, and wondering how the world could stay so normal when mine had just shattered. But then, I heard it, the deep, familiar hum of engines. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Then the sound grew louder, steady, rhythmic, powerful. I looked up and saw a line of sleek black SUVs turning the corner, headlights slicing through the evening air. They didn't just pull up, they arrived. The kind of arrival that made everyone on the street stop and stare. The doors opened in perfect sequence. Security guards stepped out first, tall, sharp, dressed in charcoal suits. Their earpieces glinted under the streetlights. They didn't say a word, just scanned the surroundings like soldiers on a mission. And then from the center car he stepped out. Nathaniel Cross. Even the air seemed to pause for him. He didn't rush, didn't look around, didn't need to. Power followed him like a shadow. His gray suit fit him like armor. His silver watch glinted under the light, and his expression, calm but lethal, made people step back without being told. I'd seen him in boardrooms, in charity events, in quiet moments at home. But never like this. Never with this storm in his eyes. He spotted me instantly. His pace quickened. When he reached me, he didn't speak right away. His gaze ran over my face, my burned neck, the trembling in my hands. And then his jaw tightened. That was the moment I saw it. The shift from concern to fury. Not loud, not explosive, but the kind that could move worlds. He took off his jacket and gently wrapped it around my shoulders, covering the burn. Who did this? His voice was low, controlled, but the weight in it made my heart shake. I swallowed hard. My lips trembled as I whispered, "Inside, those 3 women. They burned my hair. My voice broke before I could finish. He didn't wait for another word. He turned to his men. "Lock the doors." It happened fast. The guards spread out in synchronized motion, stepping into the salon like shadows made of iron. Customers froze. The laughter stopped. Through the glass, I could see panic flicker across faces that had been smug only moments ago. Nathaniel walked forward, his presence slicing through the room like a blade. The salon owner rushed to him, stammering, Sir, please, what's happening?" Nathaniel didn't even look at her. He walked straight to the chair where I had been sitting, the one with strands of my burned hair still lying on the floor. He stared at it for a long, chilling moment. Then his voice came out steady, almost quiet. "You burned my wife." The words hit the air like thunder. A few clients gasped. The 3 women froze. One of them tried to laugh. "Wife?" "You must be mistaken." He turned his gaze to her, and the sound died in her throat. His tone didn't rise, but every syllable carried authority that made even silence tremble. "You thought she was beneath you. You thought she didn't belong here. You were right about one thing. She doesn't. Because she belongs to me?" He turned to the manager next. "Close this place." "Permanently?" The manager blinked. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding. Nathaniel raised a hand slightly. "You watched. You did nothing. That's all I need to understand." Outside, I stood at the doorway, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I didn't want revenge. I hadn't called him for that. I just needed him to know, to understand the pain I'd carried out of that salon. But as I watched him handle it with such composure, such silent power, I realized something. He wasn't just defending me. He was restoring something they had tried to take. My dignity. When he walked back toward me, his voice softened. "Let's go home." But before we turned away, he looked back once more. His gaze lingered on the 3 women, now pale, shaking, speechless. "You burned her," he said quietly, "but the real burn will be what follows." And just like that, we walked out, the doors closing behind us like a final sentence. That was the night I learned. Silence can be the loudest answer in the world. The city outside was silent, But inside La Belle Étoile, you could feel the air tighten like a held breath. I stayed near the entrance, Nathaniel's jacket wrapped around my shoulders as he stepped back into the center of the salon. His calmness was more terrifying than shouting could ever be. The three women stood huddled near the mirrors, their confidence melting under the weight of his presence. The tallest one, the one who had pressed the curling iron to my neck, tried to compose herself. "Mr. Cross, I had no idea she was your wife. We were just joking." "Joking," he repeated softly, walking closer. "You burned her hair. You scarred her skin. You humiliated her in front of a room full of people, and you call that a joke?" The woman's painted smile collapsed. Her friends tried to step forward, stammering excuses about misunderstandings, about playfulness gone too far. Nathaniel didn't raise his voice once. He simply said, "I own this place." That sentence seemed to rip the ground from beneath them. The staff gasped. The manager's face went white. Sir, we didn't know." "No," Nathaniel said, his eyes sweeping across the room. "You all knew exactly what you were doing. You saw cruelty and stayed silent because it was dressed in diamonds." One of the stylists started to cry. The receptionist tried to speak, but her voice broke. Nathaniel turned to her, his tone neither kind nor cruel, just factual. "Your silence cost you your integrity. You're free to leave. All of you are. This salon is closed, effective now." He looked at the three women again. "As for you," he said, "you wanted to remind someone where she belongs. Allow me to return the favor." He gestured to one of his men. The guard stepped forward and handed him a folder. Contracts, financial papers, everything that proved what I already knew. Nathaniel had bought the majority of the salon's shares months ago as a silent investor. Now, with a flick of his signature, ownership transferred fully to his holding company. "This property," he continued, "is no longer yours to walk into. The next time you try, the police will escort you out." Their mouths fell open. They begged, some softly, some desperately, but Nathaniel didn't look at them again. Instead, he walked to me. His voice gentled, his eyes softening in a way that made my throat tighten. "Let's leave this place," he said quietly. "It doesn't deserve another minute of your pain." I nodded, but something inside me refused to move. Not yet. My heart was still pounding with everything I hadn't said. I turned back toward them, my voice trembling but steady. "You laughed when I cried. You called me worthless. But I wasn't poor, I was just kind, and you mistook kindness for weakness." No one spoke. The room was so quiet I could hear the chandelier humming above us. "I'm not here to punish you," I continued. "Life will do that on its own. I just hope, one day, you remember how it feels to be treated as less than human." The woman who burned me started to cry, mascara streaking down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I looked at her, not with hatred, but with something heavier. "I forgive you," I said softly, "but I'll never forget you." Nathaniel placed his hand on the small of my back, guiding me toward the exit. As we stepped outside, the cool air touched my skin again. Behind us, the salon lights flickered and dimmed, one by one, until the place that once smelled of arrogance and perfume was swallowed by silence. Nathaniel's guards followed, their steps echoing against the marble. He turned to me when we reached the car, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. "You didn't deserve any of that," he murmured. I looked up at him, voice still fragile. "They thought I was nothing." He smiled faintly, a dangerous kind of calm in his eyes. "Then it's time they learn how wrong they were." As the car door closed behind me, I glanced out the window. The salon's name, once glowing gold, flickered weakly in the dark, like pride losing its shine. In that moment, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vengeful. I just felt free. For the first time since walking into that place, I could breathe again, and deep down, I knew this wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something far stronger than revenge, rebirth. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Headlines flashed across every screen. Billionaire CEO's wife humiliated in luxury salon. Husband shuts it down overnight. I didn't speak to the press, but that didn't stop them. Photos of me leaving the salon, wrapped in Nathaniel's jacket, had spread like wildfire. The same people who used to laugh at my simplicity now whispered my name with fear and fascination. But none of that mattered to me. Not the gossip, not the apology letters that flooded our office, not even the salon's sudden bankruptcy. What mattered was what came after. What I did with the silence that followed. A few weeks later, Nathaniel drove me to a quiet part of the city, a sunlit corner near the community center where I used to volunteer before my life became gilded in wealth. The building there was new, elegant, but warm. The glass doors carried a name written in soft gold letters, The Phoenix Studio. It was mine. Inside, the air smelled of lavender and fresh paint. The mirrors were wide and spotless, the chairs simple but comfortable. This wasn't a salon for the rich. It was a sanctuary for women who'd been told they weren't enough, women who had been mocked, broken, or made to feel invisible. I trained the first batch of girls myself. Some had scars, not just on their skin, but in their hearts. One had been fired for standing up to her boss, another had fled an abusive home, and one simply whispered, "I was never treated like a person before." I looked at them and saw myself, the girl who once cried outside a salon, clutching her scarf to hide a burn. And I told them, "You are not defined by what people did to you. You are defined by what you do next." Every time I said it, I felt my own wounds heal a little more. One evening, as the sun melted into gold across the windows, Nathaniel came in quietly. He stood by the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching me finish teaching a young woman how to curl her client's hair properly. When our eyes met, he smiled. That rare, soft smile he reserved only for me. "Do you like it?" he asked, glancing around the room. I nodded. "It's not about luxury anymore. It's about dignity." He walked closer, his voice low. "You turned your pain into something beautiful." "I knew you would," I smiled faintly. "I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace, and maybe a reminder that kindness can rise from ashes." He brushed his thumb gently across the faint scar on my neck. "A reminder," he repeated softly, "that no flame can burn a woman who knows her worth." Later that week, I was invited to a charity gala. Ironically, the same circle that once mocked me now wanted to honor me for empowering women. I accepted the invitation, not out of pride, but closure. When I walked into the ballroom, heads turned, not because of what I wore, but because of what I carried inside: calm, confidence, and quiet strength. Halfway through the evening, I noticed 3 familiar faces in the crowd, the same women. They stood near the exit, silent and pale. Life had not been kind to them since that day. Their businesses collapsed, their reputations stained. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. One of them met my gaze, the one who had burned me. Her eyes glistened with guilt. She mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." I didn't look away. I simply nodded once, not in forgiveness, but in finality. She understood. When I took the stage to speak, I looked at the sea of faces before me and said, "They burned my hair to humiliate me. But the fire didn't destroy me. It refined me. And what rose from those ashes wasn't anger. It was purpose." The audience fell silent. Cameras flashed. And in that still moment, I realized I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The girl who once left a salon in tears had become a woman who could rebuild from flames. As I stepped off the stage, Nathaniel took my hand, his voice a whisper only I could hear. "They once laughed at you, Aurora. Now they'll learn from you." I smiled. "No," I said softly. "Now they'll remember me." And with that, we walked out, not into revenge, but into peace. The kind that glows quietly like a scar that no longer hurts, only reminds, because some fires burn to destroy, but others They burn to reveal who you really are. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button right now. Share it with someone who's been mistreated and remind them, real class isn't about money, it's about kindness. Subscribe for more powerful stories where karma arrives wearing elegance.